Hey everybody, in this video I'm going to try and show you how to make a bar graph that matches both APA requirements and matches the expectations for the way a graph typically looks in psychological journals when we report our research. Okay, now here I'm going to make a very basic graph, meaning I'm going to show a graph that depicts the difference between two conditions of one IV. So a very simple graph. There's only going to be two bars, a bar for each of the conditions. If you had one variable with three conditions, you would make a graph with three bars. If you had two variables with two conditions in each of those variables, the graph would get even more complex. Here, I'm just showing you how to make a very simple graph with one predictor that has two conditions. And so we are comparing, or we're creating a bar graph that depicts the difference between those two conditions on our DB. So I'm going to do this in two different programs. I'm going to first do this in Excel. Now, I'm going to be doing this in Excel on a PC. If you do this on Excel on a Mac, many of the things that I'm going to show you probably won't apply. For whatever reason, Apple likes to be difficult. They like to be proprietary. For what I don't know why they do it, but for whatever reason, many of the times, the interfaces in Mac, in Apple, tend to be different than the interfaces in a PC. So, you may have to use a PC if you want to use Excel to do what I'm doing, you're probably going to have to use a PC. So you might track one down at a local library or something. But I'm also going to be showing you how to do this all in Google Sheets, which everybody has access to. All you got to do is open a Gmail account, which are free. And so you have free access to Google Sheets and Google Sheets and Google Docs, which are the two programs that you need to do what I'm going to be doing here. If you want to do what I'm doing here using Word, again, the concepts should be similar in Mac, but the interface will be different, very likely. But if you want to do the things I'm showing here, you want to use a PC, and you'll need Excel and Word. Okay. Now, one thing that I will mention is that in my classes, I usually require you to upload Microsoft Word files. And so if you use Google Sheets to make the graph in the way that I'm going to show you in this video, you can also export that as a Word document, and I'll show you how to do that. All right, so first, let's start off with Excel. So I'm going to share my screen. Okay, so here is, I'm going to actually hide this so I can show you how to get this. But here is my Excel sheet. Now, I've put in some data here, and I've just made this up. It literally means nothing, okay? I've just made this up for the purpose of this video. So let's say I have an experimental condition and let's say that my DV is on a scale from 1 to 7, okay? And let's say that those in my experimental condition have a mean score of 6, and those in my control condition have a mean score of 4. Okay, well, I want to make a bar graph depicting that difference. So I'm going to do that using Excel by putting in my labels and then putting in the means for each of my conditions. Now, I can do this way, or I could do it this way. All right. Either one of these are fine. You just have to do a little bit of tweaking. But I'm actually going to start, because it's very similar to how you would do it in Google Sheets, by organizing my data this way. Okay. So I've got my conditions, and I've got the means of my participants' responses in each of those conditions. So I'm going to highlight my data and labels. I'm going to go to Insert. I'm going to go over here to this option here, click it, and choose the very first option. Okay, we've got our foundation. So let's make this nice and clean. Let's make it match both APA requirements and the norms for a graph made in used to depict results in psychological research. So first, when we're making a graph in APA format, the title is not part of the graph, it's above it. And you'll see that when we get to the end. So I'm going to delete this title out of the graph. Also, we typically want our graphs to be simple. We don't want them to be very busy. And so what we do in that interest is we typically delete these grid lines back here. So all I have to do that is I just click one of the grid lines. Mind you, if I click anywhere else, it won't select the grid lines. Note that when I click off of the grid lines, it selects the whole chart area. So in order to get the grid lines, I have to actually click one of the grid lines. You see how the little dots are on the ends of the lines here? That means those grid lines are selected. Now to get rid of them, just press delete. Boop, gone. Okay, easy peasy. Now, I need a visible y-axis line here, and it needs to match the visible x-axis line here. The y-axis line and the x-axis, the y-axis line and the x-axis line need to be uniform. And so to do that, I'm going to click over in the area of the y-axis, but I'm going to double click. And here's why. When I double click, it opens a formatting menu. Now over here, you have a bunch of different options. It's going to default to this section here. And you get a bunch of options here that we do need to tweak. So I'm going to start here first. Notice that this starts at 0. Well, I told you that our scale went from 1 to 7. On our y-axis, we never want numbers that were impossible. Well, since our scale was from 1 to 7, 0 is impossible. So we don't want that number to have been there. So instead, I'm going to come up here to where it says minimum, and I'm going to put 1 in there. And I'm going to press enter and see how my y-axis adjusts. So now it only includes the possible range of values from 1 to 7. Okay. Now I want that y-axis line to be visible. And so to do that, I'm going to come over here to this paint bucket. I'm going to click that. I'm going to come down here to line. All right. You might see it like this. They might be collapsed, but I'm going to come to line, and I'm just clicking this arrow at this beside the word here to collapse it and uncollapse it. I'm going to click solid line, and then I'm going to choose the color. Now, thankfully here it defaulted to black, but it won't always. So make sure that you choose black as the theme color. And because I want it to be nice and vivid, I'm going to turn up the width of the font to be 1. Okay. So now when I click off of that, it's nice and visible. Okay. But now, like I said, I want the x-axis line to match it. It needs to be uniform. So I'm going to click on the x-axis line down here. All right, literally all I did is I clicked on the words for x. So I'm going to click off, and I'm going to click back on. So you can see I'm just clicking one of the words on the x-axis line. Now note that there is no legend here. We don't need a legend. We only have one predictor, and that one predictor has 2 conditions. And so we don't need an extra legend. We just need to label the conditions on the x-axis. And you make sure that you have your labels by putting them up here in your data. Okay, so again, I'm going to label or make sure that the line on my x-axis matches. So how do I do that? So again, I click. If this formatting menu has gone away, then I will double click and it pops up. So I'm going to come to the paint can again. Again, if this is collapsed, I'm going to click the arrow next to it, and I'm going to select next to line, and I'm going to select solid line. Again, choosing the color as black. It already defaulted to black, so that's great, but again, it may not. And then I want to make it the same size as the y-axis line, which I had turned up to 1. So make that 1, click off, boom, they're uniform. All right. Now, I also want the bars of my graph to be visually distinct. We don't want the 2 bars to be identical. And so the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to click on my first one. Note that there's dots here, here, and here, and here. And so actually they're all the way around. So you can see them here and here and here and here. Because I've only clicked once, I've actually selected both bars. But I need each of them to be visually distinct. So I need to format each of them individually. So in order to do that, I'm going to click the bar that I want to edit a second time. So now see that the little balls, the little buttons are here, but they're not over here. That means that this bar is selected while this one is not. So anything that I do in the formatting menu over here is only going to apply to this bar. So what do I want it to do? Well, I want it to have, because usually the graphs that we put in journal manuscripts use grayscale, so they're black, white, some pattern fill, or some variation of that, maybe gray. We're going to take the color out. Technically, there's nothing wrong with color according to APA format. It's just for all sorts of traditional reasons, we usually only use grayscale. Okay. So I'm going to make this bar solid black with a black outline. Okay. So to do that, I'm going to go to Fill, click Solid Fill. Now it automatically selected black. That's awesome. But in case it didn't, I'm going to come down here to Color and select black. Okay. Now I'm going to make the line here labeled border solid. I want it to be black. Again, thankfully it defaulted to it, but in case it didn't, choose your color there. And I want the lined widths to all be equivalent. So I'm going to make that 1. Okay. Now I want to format this one. So again, now I'm just going to click on this one. You see how there are no buttons here, but there are here. Okay. So again, I'm going to come over here to the paint bucket. I'm going to do the same thing. This time, I'm going to select a solid fill, and I'm going to select a different color. Now, if I just have 2 bars, what I'll often do is choose white on the second bar, but then I've got to make the border equivalently large. So these are visually distinct. 2 bars and they're visually distinct. Now, what I like to do in Excel, and Excel gives me a lot more options, is I'll go to pattern fill, and I'll choose one of these patterns. Like I like that one, but then I've got to make it black. So I like that. That looks nice to me, but you know, if we want it to be very simple, because again, we don't want it to be too busy, you know, just a simple white fill or a gray fill. You could use a gray fill. That would do as well. Okay. Now, we also want our y-axis label. So to do that in Excel, I'm going to select this middle area. Note here, this middle area is selected. If I click out here, it's not. Okay, so I want to click this center area and pull this over. And the reason I want to pull that over is because I want to put a y-axis label right here. And so to do that, I'm going to go to Insert, Text Box, and then create a text box in here. I'm going to center it. I'm going to make it Times New Roman, 12-point font, and I'm just going to put my label in here. Now, you wouldn't put dependent measure. You would put in the name of your DV here. Okay, but I'm just doing this to, because this is a general guide to how you make a stock graph. Now, you see how when I hover my mouse over this circle up here, my mouse changes. Well, that signifies to me that I can click on that and rotate it. Well, I want to rotate it. I want to rotate it to be up and down, vertical. So I do that, and then I move it over here. Now, you may notice that it is that my variable or my y-axis label is different, right? It doesn't match the font size or font type of these, and I want it to, because we want all that to be uniform. So in order to change those, I'm going to click in the bottom right corner here. Honestly, you could click in any of the corners. It doesn't really matter. You just need to click somewhere that you know it selects the whole thing. Here, it's not selecting the whole thing. It's selecting only the center area. Here, if I click here, it's not selecting the whole thing. It's only selecting this axis. If I click here, it's not selecting the whole thing. It's only selecting the y-axis. So I want to click somewhere in the graph so that I only see the outside having those buttons. Then I come up here, select Times New Roman, bump up the font to 12. There we go. All the same font. Now you might notice something that actually bugs me is that these words and these numbers are slightly grayer than these. So to fix that, again, leaving everything selected, I'm going to go here and select the font color to be black. Now it matches. Now, this is bugging me, so I'm going to fix it. This y-axis label is a little too close to this label here, so I'm going to pull this over. All I did is I selected the center area, so these buttons showed up, and I pulled this over. There we go. All right, this is ready to be put into Word, so I'm going to pull up a Word document. And I'm going to press Control C, which you could also right click and choose copy. Go over to my Word document and press Control V to paste it, or right click and choose this first option for paste. Okay. Now you see this gray line around it. We don't like that. So I'm going to click that. So you see it's selected. I'm going to right click, go to Format Chart Area, go to Border, and select No Line. When I click off, it's gone. Awesome. Now I need some space above this in order to complete it. So I'm going to actually remove my graph for a second and type in what I need above it. So what I need above it is the figure number, my only figure, so figure 1. And then I need the figure title, and the figure title needs to be italicized. So we're going to put in here, I'm going to put in here something nondescript, but you would always want a descriptive title. So there we go. And then I paste in my graph. There we go. There's your graph. All right. It has your y-axis label. These the y and x-axis are uniform. This looks good. This is golden. Okay. Now, that's all in Excel. How would we do this in Google Sheets? Well, let's go to Google Sheets. So I've already done it here, but I'm going to go ahead and delete this and show you how I did it. So I've put my data in just like I did before. Okay. I'm going to go to Insert, Chart. And for whatever reason, Google wants to automatically give you a pie chart. I don't know why, but we aren't ever really going to use a pie chart. So we're going to come up here to Chart Type and select Bar Graph, or Column Chart as it labels it. You see these lines back here? We want those gone. So I'm going to click on that, delete it. Tells me I can't delete it like I could in Excel. So instead, I'm going to come over here to Grid Lines and Ticks, scroll down. You see how Major Grid Lines is selected? I'm going to unselect it. Problem solved. Okay. But I want that y-axis, sorry, that x-axis line, this horizontal one, to be there. So I'm going to click on this box. And I'm going to actually come back down here to Grid Lines, see that it selects horizontal axis, and select Major Ticks. So that line is now there. But I don't really want these ticks there. So to get rid of that, where it says ticks position, and it says cross, I'm going to select the drop down. From the drop down, I'm going to select none. Boom, gone. And I've got my x-axis line. Now, I want my y-axis line. So I'm going to come to vertical axis, and I'm going to click Show Axis Line. Boom, it's there. And they're automatically uniform. Now, note, as last time, we don't want impossible numbers to be on that y-axis line. 0 is there. Also, I don't see every number that I want. I want 1 to 7, right? So what do I got to do to fix that? Well, I'm going to click on this line, the y-axis, and I'm going to come down here to minimal value and max value. All right, I'm going to put in here, so the minimum value or scale, like I said, was 1, and the maximum was 7. All right. Now, I'm also then going to come down here to Grid Lines and Ticks. You see how it says major spacing type, and it says step? Well, I want it to be in 1s. It's automatically defaulting to 2s, so I'm just going to put 1. And there you go. I've got my my y-axis. Okay. Now, I want my y-axis labeled. Okay. So in order, now note, my x-axis is already labeled. It's labeled for the same reason it was labeled back in Excel, because it's part of the original data. But in order to label my y-axis, which your y-axis runs vertically, your x-axis runs horizontally. Okay. So that's what, so when it says vertical axis, that's your y-axis. Your horizontal axis, that's your x-axis. So I'm going to go to vertical axis. Okay. And I want to label it. So in order to label it, this vertical axis does a lot of the formatting, except for the ticks, which you've got to do in grid lines and ticks. But in order to label it, I'm going to come up here to chart and axis titles. I'm going to select from this drop-down vertical axis title, and I'm going to type in my label. So see, what did we use for the dependent measures? Just dependent measure. Okay. So we'll do that here. Dependent measure. All right. Now, for whatever reason, Google, I can't find Times New Roman. So if you can't find Times New Roman, that's okay. It does have Courier New, okay, which is the other one made available by or accepted by APA format. I believe it will also accept. There's a third one that it'll now accept, but classically, Times New Roman and Courier New were the only fonts that APA format used. So I'm going to click Courier New. I'm going to click here, select horizontal axis title. Label font. So so what did I do? I clicked my x-axis. That opened the horizontal axis and allowed me to select label font. So again, I'm going to choose Courier New. Okay. Now, I'm almost done here, but I need to make my bars visually distinct. So what do I got to do? So I want to make this bar different from this one. So what did I do in my first one? I made my experimental bar black and my control bar gray. So let's do that in Google. So I'm going to click this one once. Sorry, click this bar once and then double click it. So what did I do? Click off of there so I can do it again. Click this bar once. That causes this. I'm going to click, then I'm going to double click it. That brings this up. That allows me to change the color of just this bar. So I'm going to make this one black. That's the fill. And I'm going to make the line color black. Boom. Now I want to make the other one gray with a black outline. So I'm going to click it once and double click it. Now I can choose gray, whoop, and I can choose the black outline. Whoop. There we go. All right, now I'm going to take that. I'm going to go to my Google Docs, and I'm going to put in my figure number. So figure, and we're going to use Courier New. All right. I'm going to put figure 1. Then I'm going to put my figure title. Again, italicized. So what label did I use? Difference between conditions on dependent measure. Okay, so that's what we'll do here. Difference between conditions on dependent measure. And I paste in my graph. Now it's going to ask whether you want to link it or not. I like to link it. You don't have to, but I like to link it. The reason I like to link it is because if you make any mistakes, you can go back here and make changes to your data and it'll import it automatically to your Word document. So I like to link it and paste. And there we go. There is your graph. All right. And so whether you do it in Google using Google Sheets and Google Docs, or in Microsoft using Microsoft Excel and Microsoft Word, you can get a graph that both satisfies APA format and the customs of psychological research. Okay, now how can I, let's say I have this, I don't have Microsoft Word, I can't do things in Microsoft Word. How do I make this a Microsoft Word document? Well, I can go to File, and I believe there's an export option in here somewhere. Download Microsoft Word right here. Okay, again, so we're going to go to File, we're going to go to Download, and then Microsoft Word. And that will download this file in a Microsoft Word document. Boom, there it is. And you can upload that or copy that into a lab report worksheet. All right. And there you go. You've got 2 graphs that meet APA formatting requirements and the customs of visualizing data in psychology research. And that, my friends, is that. Sorry, I should have shut my door. I have some colleagues who are hanging out and chatting, and so hopefully you could still hear me. But there you go. That's your guidance. Rewatch this, rewind it as many times as you need. But there you go. That's how you make an APA formatted graph. Now, the one thing I will mention is that all you have to do to change the data is just go back to your Excel sheet or to your Google Sheets sheet and change the numbers. All right, all you gotta do to change the labels on the x-axis is go into the Excel sheet or the Google Sheets sheet and change the labels. Where it says experimental, change that to the name of one of the names of your conditions. Where it says control, change that to the name of your other condition. All right, and you can create one of these graphs using either of these programs. All right, guys, that is it for this video. As always, if you got questions, send them my way. If not, work hard, study hard, and I'll see you next time.